prepared the tools that we use for making an armature. Got some thin foil, paper tape, you can find in the floral department of your craft store, aluminum tape, you can find at a hardware store in the vent section, and some armature wire, some wire cutters, and some needle nose pliers. Today I'm going to be talking about a doll armature and how you decide where you're going to put the different landmarks on her body. Here's an armature that I'm just in the process of barely putting together. It's just one piece of wire that's down from her feet, up, loops above, comes back down, and then there's an arm piece that goes across. And I've secured it with some tape and also some paper tape. Then the other thing I have, just a really rough piece, but it's basically a piece of foil and tape that just says one head on it, because it's the measurement of what her head is, basically. And so that's how I know how long to make her arms, how long to make her legs, where her waist should be. So I'll show you closer how we set this up. Alright, the main landmarks. Got my little head measure right here. This doll is about 7.5 heads when you count them all down. And the first landmark, we've got the head and then the next head down here. This is going to be about where her breasts are. And then down one more further is going to be around where her waist is, and her belly button will be just a little bit higher. With this doll, she's actually a little bit longer because she's going to be in a seated position. And whenever you put a doll in a seated position, it takes more wire. I don't know why that is, but yeah, for the wire to curve, it's going to end up using more wire. So I've given her even little feet down at the bottom so I can use whatever wire I need to keep her in the proportions that I want. And right now her arms are quite long because really her arms will only be going down to about, let's say 1, 2, 3, about 4.5 heads down here, about down to here. You want the fingertips to be halfway down the thigh. And so these are too long, but again, as I put her in different positions, I'll just measure again later. And it's always easier to just clip off what you don't need than it is to try to add more wire to wire. So that's why I do that. So first thing with her, we're just going to bulk her out a little bit, and then I'll wrap her with some paper tape and then show you what she looks like. When I bulk her out, I like to use the really thin aluminum foil. You don't want the heavy duty, just because with the small stuff you can really condense it easier and you can add smaller portions to it without it being too bulky. And then I also use this aluminum tape, which you can just find in a hardware store, and then I like to tear it into little strips like this. And so what I've done right here is I put on some aluminum foil, and then I have also used a strip of this tape, and that helps that foil to stay in place, because otherwise when you're making an armature it can start falling off and just be annoying. And so that's what I found to make it a much more peaceful process. With the female doll, it's pretty easy to remember that you want the front bulked out a bit because she'll be having her breasts and the way that the chest, the rib cage sits. But also you want the back bulked out a little bit too, because the shoulders will sit here in the middle, and then I'm going to add more here and more in the front, because it actually, there's a lot of muscle that's in the back, and so it shows up as well. It just won't be bowing out like the front will. Here's how she looks with the foil in place. Next will be the wrapping her with paper tape, and on her, I've given her this longer head wire. That way, if I decide to make the neck longer or shorter, I've got some leeway. And for now, I just kind of have it tipped back to hold her head in place. Then the other area I'm going to bulk out is her pelvis and bottom. And that's about how much foil and tape I'll use, and then I'll just wrap her with paper tape. So here she is again with her bulking. One head, 2 heads. You can see how that will be more the breast area now. 3 heads to the waist and hips. 4 heads takes you down to just below the thigh. 5 heads, 6 heads, 7 heads, and again she's about 7.5 heads. and I will just cut off whatever I need to with that. Mostly I'm going to watch these arms, and I'll make sure that they're only going to come down to about, let's see, about here-ish. Okay, so you can mark them, or what I do is I just keep measuring my doll as I sculpt, so I can tell where her arms are supposed to be, because if you just look at your own arms and measure on your own body, just see where your elbow goes to, feel down, see where your hands go to. That's an easy way to do it as well. Also, at Sculpt University, you can look up the doll proportion body charts that are there for you. So here's how she looks in her bended pose. She's going to be sitting, maybe having her legs crossed. I'm not sure what I'll do with her hands yet, perhaps on her knees or up by her face. But you can see I've bent the wire back about where her hand length will end, so I've got that extra wire, but it's not going to be distorting what I'm trying to do. So that's where she's at so far. And then I'm going to bulk out her thighs just a little bit, probably with just some clay, and then bake that. Do the same with her legs, and then she'll be ready to add her first layer of clay to. Here she is with her little skinny arms in place, and this clay will be baked hard and act as an armature for the arms to bulk them out a little bit. And when I do this, I like to bake it, I'll take the head off probably and stick the whole doll in the oven again to bake it nice and firm, and then I'll look at these arms really close and see if that dimension's going to work great for me, and if not, I'll just take my little X-Acto knife and shave them off a little bit where I need to. But again, I prefer to have a little bit more than necessary that I can shave away and work with. Alright, here she is, all completed. Now, when I bake these clay bits on the bottoms, I'm going to be able to carve at them if I need to adjust the length, and also they'll slide a little bit up on the wire. So I have those things going for me, because sometimes you need to adjust the length a little bit once you're actually in the sculpting process to see what's going to work best for your doll. But that is how you do a bulked out armature with the clay bulking out the arms and legs. Here's how the armature looks after it's been baked, and here she's in her seated pose. So that's what we've got to work with, and that is what we will start adding the clay to. That's how you do armatures.